Get out of the way!
Hello, everyone. It is me. Don't be alarmed. I am just sitting alone in the dark. Why? Well, I do have a review for you guys called Alone in the Dark. I also might have forgotten to pay my electric bill. So, yeah, the electricity's out. Maybe I belong alone in the dark. Nothing? That wasn't funny? That wasn't funny? Okay, never mind. Let's start the review. The newest installment in this heavily divisive and directionless survival horror series, Alone in the Dark 2024 is a modern reimagining of the 1992 classic original that pioneered the genre as we know it today. I say reimagining because, by my definition, that's what it is. A remake is the same story as the original counterpart, but with improved gameplay. A reboot is a completely different story, not in the same continuity as the original, but retains certain key aspects like its characters, settings, or gameplay features. A reimagining is basically a rewriting of the original work, with of course those gameplay improvements that come with most remakes. And even though it's still perfectly valid to call this game a remake, I prefer to call it a reimagining, as there are much more new pieces of plot elements, themes, and introduced characters. The original is about Detective Edward Carnby, or Emily Hartwood, investigating the death of Emily's uncle, Jeremy Hartwood, in Derceto Manor. In this one, you get to once again play as either of these two characters, now portrayed by David Harbour and Jodie Comer, to investigate the disappearance of Jeremy, who is apparently played by Willem Dafoe.
I'm something of a scientist myself.
There are two big differences in the plot now. The first is the actual inclusion of characters still residing in Derceto Manor, all of whom act very strange, and you come to realize that hardly any, if none of them, can actually be trusted. The second is that this game is actually split into two segments now. The mansion, where most of the puzzle solving and the clues are, and then transitioning into Jeremy's memories. This second part of the game, that these nightmarish landscapes where you have to defend yourself from monsters, while simultaneously delving into Jeremy's psyche to figure out whatever the fuck is going on. So yeah, it's a bit different from before. The main villain of this game is the terrifying Dark Man, an evil force that, despite only making a few appearances throughout, always felt present or nearby, like he's watching you. His original counterpart existed, but it was this pirate guy that you fight. Yarg, matey. Uh, yeah, he wasn't scary in the original. This guy, though, holy shit, get away from me. The design, so creepy. This is definitely the best Alone in the Dark game since at least The New Nightmare in 2001, and arguably even longer than that, going all the way back since the original trilogy in the 90s. But that's not saying much. Only two games came out between this and The New Nightmare, and they both really sucked. Alone in the Dark 2008 had some great ideas, but failed on executing practically all of them and turned itself into a colossal mess in game design.
What is this?
And then there's Illumination that came out in 2015, which is actually considered one of the worst video games ever made. So this is certainly the most proper Alone in the Dark game we've had in a very long time. Now, is it perfect? Absolutely not. It'd even be a stretch for me to call it a great game, and I'll give reasons as to why a little bit later. But for the most part, it's a pretty enjoyable survival horror game through and through. When you play as either Edward or Emily, the places you visit are pretty much the same, but the interactions the characters they encounter with are really different in terms of dialogue. They also each have their own chapter where they revisit a piece of their past to confront personal guilt. I think the game did a great job of giving us a reason to play through with both main characters, even if it may not seem like it early on. The game contains a few secret endings too that require you to find certain items and collectibles that appear in different chapters. It's also worth mentioning just how deep the game goes in its lore and history, with tons of notes complete with voiced over lines. One thing I absolutely love about this game is just the general atmosphere of it. Now, I'm aware that in terms of visual fidelity, it's pretty dated. It looks like an early PS4 game, right? But that's more understandable when coming from a lower budget studio like Pieces Interactive. But I don't think they could have done a better job at capturing that 1930s high society scene, from the costumes to the hairstyles, right down to characters smoking and drinking nonstop until they die at the ripe old age of 45. I also think they did a really good job with tension within that atmospheric approach, from anxiously moving around corners always on edge, to hallucinations and psychological breakdowns, memories contorting in and out of reality, facing great dangers in your worst nightmares that hunt by sound, to just, what the fuck is going on? It can be a pretty scary game. There were actually a few times when it just made me jump out of my seat, even from just the smallest audible interruptions.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
The combat of Alone in the Dark is pretty standard fare for survival horror games. Each protagonist starts with their own handgun, but can also use melee weapons lying around that break after a handful of swings, which can range from one-handed pipes and hatchets to two-handed oars, shovels, and even sledgehammers. You may even come across a crucifix in your travels. Yeah, the power of Christ compels you, bitch! Fuck! Arrgh! But there's also a little stealth aspect to it that lets you sneak. But it feels rather underutilized and tacked on at the last minute. It's not like it gives you a stealth kill prompt when you approach the monster. You can also throw various objects at them if you're low on ammo, whether it be bricks or rocks. Sometimes it can even be a Molotov cocktail to burn them with. The game also features a dodge button. Again, it's cool that it's there, but it just doesn't feel like a fully fleshed out aspect, and unfortunately won't save you when you're getting stun locked to death by a monster gangbang fuckfest. A little later on, you'll acquire a double-barrel shotgun, which I guess is good stopping power, but it doesn't help that I have to reload after every 2 shots, and so it's very easy to get swarmed when it's intended for close quarters combat. It's definitely my least favorite gun in the game, and for a survival horror, that kinda sucks. And lastly, just for the sake of the game having an automatic weapon, about halfway through you will get a Tommy gun!
This is getting ridiculous. I mean, I'm not complaining.
That's just about the gist of the combat. It's nothing to write home about. But even though it's not as polished or as fun as something like Resident Evil 4 Remake, it presents itself well enough. It's not amazing, but not terrible either. Oh, and to heal, you just drink alcohol. So in other words, you're John Wicking it. The puzzles in this game, however, vary wildly. This game is filled to the brim with puzzles and riddles that can do a good job of really making you stop and think, probably in a way more than any Resident Evil game ever has. But while most of them are cleverly put together, there are a couple that are so easy a baby could figure out, no exaggeration. But then just minutes later, it can be so picky in terms of puzzle pieces that it makes you have to figure out which indistinguishable corner goes in which spot, even though the image you made is already matched up with the clue. This is so fucking annoying, and probably the main reason why I'm so reluctant on doing a speedrun. Check out this puzzle. I match the rooms up with the blueprint underneath and solve it, right? Only for Emily to glance at one of the pieces that has a list of names written on it. Okay, so why couldn't we just do that in the first fucking place? And what kind of clue is this? What is left? Water is right, and hell is back again. I had to look this nonsense up. Turns out that what is 4 letters, water is 5 letters, and hell is 4 letters. Get it? So the safe combination is 454. What kind of bullshit clue is that? I have to use the amount of letters it takes to spell out the highlighted words as my answer? The fuck? So, I have a very checkered opinion on the puzzles the game presents. Some are brilliant, like the astronomy symbol ones. Some are really stupid easy, and others just feel too picky in expectations of the player, or just downright leaving you feel clueless, maybe because of how poorly explained some of them are. There were a couple times where I believed my game was bugging out, but nah, some of the puzzles just suck ass. Speaking of bugs, it's about time I move on to the one collective thing that is currently stopping me from fully recommending the game at full price. This game is plagued with technical problems. It's actually quite problematic how frequently you will get stuck on something and can't move just because you walked on it or even near it. This happened to me way too many times. Sometimes when I was in the middle of a chase sequence or a fight and it led to my death. There were a few occasions where I couldn't get out no matter how many times I tried mashing the dodge button in every direction, and I had to resort to loading my last autosave. Like the newer Resident Evil games in terms of exploration, Alone in the Dark adopts the design of letting you know when you've cleared a room by making it go from red to blue on the map. But there will be times when it forgets that you picked something up or completed a puzzle there, and it will remain red and incomplete, as well as one instance where a key item wouldn't highlight when I approached it. Just another thing I had to look up, the photo on Edward's desk in his past chapter. Also, the settings not saving every time I boot the game up is really annoying as well. All of these issues need to get fixed soon in order for me to really recommend it at full price. That doesn't necessarily mean I regret my purchase, though. I still enjoyed the game for what it was despite its shortcomings. And because I pre-ordered the game, I have a bonus skin that lets me play as the retro old-school polygon versions of Edward and Emily. I do wish it applied to both of them, though, like in Resident Evil 4, instead of only the one you're playing as. That's one nitpick. Another nitpick is opening a ton of containers or boxes that have nothing in them, among other pointless player interactions. When it's not trying to be scary, the game just oozes personality and charm. There are times when you'll come across something that acts as an homage, like snooping around Dr. Gray's office in fixed camera angle mode, where the character you're playing as will say something like, "Oh, this feels very familiar," a fourth wall break to old school survival horror vets. There are also a couple moments that make you feel like Indiana Jones for some reason.
I am singing his theme song 'cause of YouTube. Copyright bullshit, public domain, and free use doesn't exist when YouTube strikes you down as copyright Nazis.
When taking the good with the bad, in its current form, my final score for Alone in the Dark 2024 has to be a decent 7 out of 10, with the potential for it to reach an 8 if future patches can fix all those nasty annoying bugs. I quite like the game overall, and despite the mediocre reviews from harsher critics than myself, I do consider this a very successful entry in the Alone in the Dark franchise. A good foundation that will hopefully help reinvigorate it and pull it away from its bad recent strings of reboots. With any luck, maybe we'll see remakes of the 2 original sequels as well. If it's anything like this, minus the technical problems of course, I really look forward to whatever comes next. And there you have it, my Alone in the Dark review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, click that like button. And if you're new here, please subscribe. I really need it. I really need the money to pay for my electric bill. Oh God. Oh my God, my eyes. Fuck. Oh, the power come back? The power came back. Wait a minute. I can't see. I'm blind.